All right. Happy Wednesday. Happy midweek to everyone. Hope you're all doing well out there in the internet world, fish world, wherever you may be. My name is Brian Brinkman. I am a producer here at Osiris Media and really, really excited to be hanging with you all here on a Wednesday afternoon. We got a fun little live episode here. We just wrapped up, as many of you know, a very interesting tab slash John Fishman's almost tab. I don't know exactly what you would call this tour. It was probably one of the more unique tours that Trey has ever embarked upon, both with Fish as well as with Tab, due to the realities of the time. And we wanted to bring one of our good friends, Megan Glionna, on to talk about this. She was at the final two shows here in New York City at Radio City. Wanted to get her thoughts in terms of what the show was like, what the experience was like, seeing this incarnation of Tab, what the music was like, as well as we talked to her back in the summertime. She was at a really great show. Hershey Night 2 was what we spoke to her after. I think she saw a few other shows beyond that, but she ended up catching one of the nights of Atlantic City. So we want to get her thoughts on that and kind of just dive into where we're at with tour right now, as we are at the tail end or at the end of the Tab run that happened here in late September and early October. And we are on the precipice of Fish's Fall Tour, as well as MSG that was announced a few weeks back. And I'm guessing many of you are either getting good news right now or carving out time in your schedule on Friday to buy tickets for the MSG run. So I'm going to bring Megan on. Before I do that, just really quickly, we are presented as always here at HF Pod on Tour by Shift Genuine Cannabis. Visit shiftcannabis.com for all your cannabis needs, especially out here in Colorado, as well as I want to give a huge shout out to our media partner, Jambase, who does such incredible work for us and has been doing an amazing job promoting and helping us get the word out about the second season of Undermined, of which we are halfway through as of today. We just released episode 5. Super excited about that, even though my head is still stuck in the world of Undermined, finishing everything out. With that, let's bring on Megan. Megan, how are you? Welcome back to HF Pod on Tour.
Thanks, Brian. I'm great. It's good to see you.
You as well. Last time we saw each other, we were midway through Fish's summer tour. There was so much to talk about from a musical standpoint. We were still like, we were in the dog days of summer at that point in time. We're now in mid-fall. I see you got a sweater. I've got my flannel. I'm getting ready to go out west to go see some fish. You are getting ready for fish here in MSG in a couple of months. But you just saw some pretty interesting and downright amazing tab shows. What are kind of your thoughts right now coming off of that last weekend of tab tour?
Yeah, I feel really lucky that I got to see these shows. I mean, who knows if we'll ever see this incarnation of a band again?
Yeah.
JFAT, maybe some other, I don't know, group of individuals, but it felt really special to be there. And I know I think they played in DC one night before coming to New York, and I didn't listen to that. So I was just kind of going into this blind, and I was psyched. I thought Saturday was awesome, and I was just super absorbed all Saturday night. I just felt like I never stopped dancing or just feeling in the moment. And I think Sunday was cool. It was like weird and different, really spacey, but I had a great time then too.
Yeah, it's interesting. You talk about going in blind. Like so I'm the type of person I listen to the entire Fish tour as it's happening. I
Mhm.
will webcast every show I can. I'll go to every show I can. I'll listen to every show the next morning. When Tab goes on tour, I'm kind of just like, I'll go and see a show. I'll have a lot of fun. It's there's a really cool space that Trey's gotten in with Tab where most of the time you know that you're not getting a lot of huge jams, you're getting a lot of songs, but you're getting this variety of Trey's playing that is akin to me of like where rock stars were at in like the 1980s, where they had to have a horn section, they had to have backing
Right.
vocals, and like it was this very big orchestral sound. And I've come to really appreciate that over the years, but I've never found a need to like go back and listen to a ton of shows outside of like the early Tab stuff. A good friend of mine was at the Portland show, and I trust his music opinion above most others. And he was like, "You have to listen to this show. Something really amazing happened in this. Everything's right." It's like, okay. I went back, I listened to it, and I found myself listening to every show of this tour. Even before the switch, there was some sort of like, it felt kind of expansive in terms of what the band was
Mhm.
playing. It felt like they were finding new ideas through both Desron's playing as well as Trey's effects. Did you find were you listening to any of the tour? Did you hear any of that as well?
A little bit. I listened to the first few shows of the tour. I got really into Tab a few years ago. I wasn't really
Okay.
into them before. And I saw them at the Brooklyn Bowl and I just started seeing them around as much as I could. And that was actually the last big show I saw before the pandemic was the January tour that Trey did up at in the Capitol Theater in Portchester.
Wow.
And I think they recorded some of that for Burn It Down for the album. And
Yeah.
those shows were awesome. I found that every time I saw them in the last few years, they were so tight, so fun, so dancey, just like really great vibe. Everybody there is just like super into it. You know,
Yeah.
it's different than a Fish show where you're going to get some people who don't really maybe know what they're there for, whereas like everybody at Tab is pretty dialed in. So I was really excited to see them again. I mean, I've been waiting for them to come back since like that show in January
Yeah.
of 2020. So I was super pumped. I actually sent my parents to their first Tab show in Wilmington, North Carolina
Oh, no
a
way.
few weeks ago. Yeah, so they went and saw them, and they got the whole band the last night, the whole band with the horns and everything. So I was glad.
Wow.
My dad's used to play sax, so I really wanted them to hear the horns, and they loved it. They thought it was great. But so I was glad
Oh,
they
man.
got them. But then I was like texting them all week, like, looks like I'm not going to get the horns. Looks like I'm not going to get the drummer. And then I was like, this isn't happening. I just totally thought the shows weren't going to happen. So I think it felt like a miracle when we were actually going into Radio City, and then it's Radio City Music Hall. Like it's
Right.
such an awesome venue and so beautiful and like just incredibly acoustic and just an awesome place to see a show. So I think walking in there felt pretty awesome. I also just had personally kind of an awesome weekend because I connected with some friends that I haven't connected with in like over 20 years. And these are people I used to see Fish with in the 90s and tour with. And so
Wow.
we all got together and it was just this like rush of memories and stories. And so it was just really kind of it felt like a homecoming in a way.
Man. And those are like the best weekends where, the
Hmm.
music is a huge part of it, but like then beyond just the music, you have all these little memories that come up that like are related just to you and your friends, but like there's thousands of other people there who are having the exact same type of experience. And that just like makes it I don't know, just so fulfilling and kind of ties it to the experience of going to a Fish show, which tends to be this
Hmm.
big event. Like I know what you mean in terms of the so I saw Tab a bunch in '01, '02, and '03, and then for a variety of reasons, I didn't see any Trey shows until, you know, he stopped playing with Tab, and then he came back.
Hmm.
I was either living overseas or I was just like it never really worked out for me to see him, so I saw him again for the first time in I think 15, 16 years,
Hmm.
in
Wow.
August 2019. And
Hmm.
they were opening up this venue here in Denver, the Mission Ballroom, that's like beautiful, just like open ballroom that
Wow.
it feels like a small stadium in a lot of ways. Like it
Hmm.
feels cozy, but like it's got a really big ceiling to it. So it feels like a big room, but like there's only 4,500, 5,000 people in there and
Wow.
he just owned the place, and
Hmm.
he just like
Yeah.
walked out and it was so crazy to see him in that environment because before that I was seeing Tab when like they were playing Alpine Valley or they were playing
Oh,
stadiums because they
wow.
were filling in for what Fish could cover during the hiatus and seeing him in this tiny room just like blew me away in terms of his ability to connect with people in like that type of space, but also like seeing the way that he'd refined the sound of the band. Like you were talking about, it's
Hmm.
so bright and it's got so
Hmm.
much energy to it. I just found myself appreciating it for what it was in a way that I hadn't before. Which hearing the early part of this tour, and it's cool that your parents got that Wilmington show. That was a really, really good show of the tour. They seem to see like the last breath of what the kind of what the intentions of this tour were before Trey
Yeah.
had to really adapt.
Yeah, exactly. And I know what you mean about being able to connect with him in a smaller space. I saw him in Brooklyn Bowl in like 2019, I think. And I was like 4 people away from him. And I hadn't been that close to Trey since like 96, And I was
Wow.
just like looking at him like, wow, like just to be this close to him and to see him feeding off that energy. I think there's something special about him, for him being able to go back to smaller rooms, that they can't do that anymore with Fish. So I get that
Yeah,
too.
like the only way they can do it is like when they did something like the Met, where
Yeah.
it's, a very highly special exclusive event, and then they can play a room like that. But that,
Yeah.
just the nature of it is going to shut a lot of people out. And so it's really hard to get into those sorts of venues. You're totally right. Like I walked up to the floor and I don't know, 3/4 of the floor was still empty, and I just kept
Yeah.
walking, and I was like,
Can I do
there's
this?
the
Can I
dock
do
right
this?
there. Yeah, like, can I be this close? It was awesome. So your parents see the show in Wilmington. I'm just
Hmm.
pulling up right now the tour on fish.net because I just kind of want to take a look at where we were at that point in time.
Hmm.
But your parents see that show, and then following that night in Wilmington, Jen
Hmm.
and now we found out Natalie tested positive. And so they had to drop off. So that Sunday night show, and I believe it was Asheville, was a
Hmm.
really interesting show. And that was kind of the first hints of this sound that we were getting there. They played a 20-minute version of MoMA Dance in the second set there that I absolutely loved.
Oh, I
And I
haven't heard
thought,
that.
it's wild. It's like, it was the first, they had been pushing jams to that point in time, but it was
Hmm.
the first one that really, like, they just completely left the structure. They had no horns in any sort of way to rein them in. They just kept going, and it
Hmm.
turns into this like wall of sound. And while it sounds very different with Russ on drums versus Fishman, it
Hmm.
kind of gave you these first hints of like, okay, this next week of tour could be really interesting. But then we find out that Russ tests positive, and now the
No.
tour completely changes. What at this point, like, are you thinking, well, they probably just shouldn't play? I don't know if I'm going to go. Like, where were you at when you started when you heard that Russ fell?
When Russell, I thought it was over. Like I thought he was gonna cancel the rest of the run, like do that night solo, and then it was over. Once I heard he was going on solo, I was like, okay, well then it's gonna be over. Although I do know that Trey does wants to play no matter what, like in any way he can. Like I think that like during the pandemic showed that the Beacon Jams, like I will play no matter what. So I
Yeah.
should have known better, but I was shocked. It never even occurred to me that Fishman would join. I don't know why. One of my other friends later was like, "Oh yeah, I thought that might happen." I was like, "It did not occur to me." So when they said that, I was like, "Let's do it." I mean, I'll be there anytime Trey plays in New York. So I was like,
Yeah.
"Let's do it." I was excited. I was super excited.
Yeah. I had a similar feeling to you and I'm just pulling it up right now. Like when he said he was going to go on stage on that Tuesday, I was like, I don't know, man. Like, I know you
Yeah.
love playing music, and like, I feel like this has to be the hardest decision. Like, I can just imagine. I remember, uh, hearing that, Trey's reaction when he found out that they couldn't play Curveball. They're about to play
Yeah.
the sound check, and it was like, no, if you play the sound check, like all this, like you can't do this. Um, but they were about to play, and he was just like, I mean, can't we just figure something out? And like
Yeah.
trying to like, move from being a professional musician to a water supply expert, and someone trying to like, organize like a small city in upstate New York. Like, I've got to imagine that the conversation of like, you don't have to play, like we can cancel this. There was
Hmm.
no way that was going to happen. We do have the experience of this happened to Dave Matthews Band when they were on their summer/fall tour earlier this year, where
Oh.
they were playing the Gorge shows, and Carter and Stefan, I believe, went down with COVID, and it turned into kind of a similar like acoustic with horns, no drums type of show.
Oh wow.
And then they joined them a week later. So like we have the experience within Red Light Management of them being adaptable. But when you start losing band members like this, I was like, I just don't even know if it's safe. Like,
Right.
who am
Yeah.
I? That was just kind of my perspective.
Yeah, I think I remember I was talking to my friend who I was going to the show with, and she's like, "Should he be playing? Like,
Right.
is this okay?" I'm like, "I don't know." I mean, I think we're all just kind of making everything up as we go these days. Like, I'm a teacher, and
Yeah.
it's like we're always trying to figure out, like, is this safe? Is this not? Is this quarantine? Is this not? I think we're all just doing the best we can.
It's a really good way to put it. Like, I think that is something that has been. I remember there was like a New York Times article about Fish right before they came back to the Hampton shows in 3.0,
Mhm.
2009. And I never heard Trey speak like this before, but he talked openly about the recession and what was happening in the
Mm,
country at the time, and how he felt like there was a service that needed to be performed for all these people that are going through a variety of struggles and are making ends meet and are figuring out, how to go along just on a day by day basis, and that they can come there and play this and perform this service for people. And
mhm.
um, to your point, at being a teacher, you can't just shut it down. Like
Yeah.
there are ways that you just have to become adaptable. And that's just kind of the reality of 99.9% of us. And so I think that Trey is taking almost a working man's approach that
Mhm.
if we can do this, we should do this. And we're going to figure out a way to make it happen. And, I listened to that acoustic show. Like, Trey acoustic shows have become an event in and of themselves. You get
Mhm.
great stories. He brings the effects out. So he's able to, really kind of like expand on the songs in an interesting way with his acoustic guitar. And it
Mhm.
ended up being like I was talking to a friend, like Trey clearly had a kind of dark sense of humor, but he's like very positive about this, which you heard throughout the remainder of the
Mhm.
tour. I don't know. He just has like a perspective that I just admire throughout all of this.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think spending his time in quarantine writing all of this music was like, definitely like really influential on him for sure.
Totally.
And it was great to
Yeah.
hear some of those songs and just some of the songs that I heard for the first time this weekend. Just awesome.
Yeah, and that's a really good point as well. I mean, it's not like he stopped playing like he was still doing his job.
Mhm.
Um he just had to do it in front of himself and then say, "Okay, here it is on Instagram live." You guys can hear it here. Um Yeah, and I think that's a really good context like for this. So they come back on Wednesday. They play two shows, Pittsburgh and DC, before you
Mhm.
see them in New York. Both shows are great. There's a 29-minute blaze on the Wednesday show in Pittsburgh. So very,
Mhm.
very strong version of Gotta Jaboo on that show as well. And then Friday night in DC, they play a really just I thought a fascinating show. MoMA Dance goes deep, 29-minute Everything's Right, and then one of my favorite jams of the entire tour, the No Men in No Man's Land, almost goes 20 minutes, and just like they get into this really funky groove, and
Mm.
Desron is just amazing in it. You then go to your shows at Radio City, and you were going in completely, you have not heard anything at this point in time of this band. Tell me what expectations you had going into this.
I was excited. I mean, I was wondering if they were going to do some Ghost of the Forest stuff, but I didn't know if Desron knew that. I didn't know kind of what direction they were going. I looked at the set list from DC and I was like, I mean, I guess I was still thinking they weren't going to repeat songs, but they
Right.
did repeat,
A
especially
lot.
on Sunday. Yeah, a lot of
Yeah.
them, but that makes sense because these 5 people have never played together before, so it kind of makes sense that they can't play like 60 songs or whatever.
Right.
But yeah, I was excited. I think we walked in and just being at Radio City is so fun, and it was just like really beautiful out here in New York, and it was just really we were outside at this great bar beforehand and just a great feeling going in, and it's such a classy place. You're kind of like, ooh, like we're in this special place. Like it felt very different from a Fish show in that way. Or sometimes I feel like that at MSG too, the new MSG now that it's been renovated, it feels kind of nice being there. And so I felt like it was kind of like hometown feeling, which was great. And yeah, I mean, I thought they sounded great right out of the gate. Like 46 Days, I thought it was really bluesy, like really, really tight, really good. I
Yeah.
thought the tube was good, really funky, tight. But I think I really like locked in during In Rounds. I love that song.
Yeah.
And it was like a slower, at least it sounded slower to me than Tab plays it. And it's funny because after the show, right after the show, I thought this happened during Came in Review, but then I listened to it again and it's actually In Rounds and they get into this like really sexy jam that's just like really funky and the bass line is like Desron is so awesome. And I kept finding
Yeah.
myself throughout the 2 nights like hearing him and just like locking in and just dancing to him. He just was killing it during that song. And I just felt like that song really went somewhere that it doesn't usually go, which was super cool. I really thought it was awesome.
Yeah, I agree. And it's interesting because that song in particular, I thought had almost like an awakening in this tour. It was played
Mm,
in like it opened a few shows. I think it was played like in the second set a couple times. I think it might have opened one of the second sets. And even still, it felt like it went into a different place at that show. And I think you're absolutely right. Like there's a combination of setting, the placement. It's the first and
hmm
only time that they've played tube on this tour, which was kind of, I've got to imagine band rehearsals for this tour were really kind of hilarious because by this point, this is their third show together. They've played two shows in different areas. Now they're settling in for a weekend in New York City. Pretty much all of them, I think, are home at that point in time. Desron lives
mm,
in New York. Trey lives in New York. Fishman, I think he's up in Maine, but New York is like a second home for him. But they're all probably like relaxed. And I,
hmm
I can only imagine Trey like throwing out like, okay, this is a Fishman song. We know this. It's kind of a weird song, but you just have to learn the bass line and we'll just jam on it once we get to this point. And it was a great jam. And then they play in rounds, this really funky, like
hmm
kind of sultry tune. And you're totally right. Like I was listening to it on Sunday morning, just thinking this is a different direction for this song,
hmm
and a direction I hope that this song and honestly a lot of these songs go in, where like it settles into this communication between Desron and Trey
hmm
that you know total rest in peace, Tony.
hmm
Amazing, amazing. There's no Tab without Tony. There none of these songs exist without Tony. But there's something about the way that Desron hears Trey and then reinterprets what Trey's playing and throws it back to him that just seems to, at least for the time being, be everything that Trey wants right now.
Totally. They were standing really close together. They were like,
Yeah.
it looked like from where I was on the other side both nights, like in orchestra two. So I was over like
Okay.
Ray's side, which would have been like Mike's side, fish speak. But I am definitely gonna try to be Des side from now on. That's my fish side is Paige side. So now I'm
Yeah.
just gonna like remember that. But yeah, they were looked like they were like 3 feet apart and just like vibing the whole time. And just Trey looked so happy to be playing with him. And yeah, he was just doing different things. Like I felt like the bass was just popping out a lot more than it usually does during Tab. But I think that there was a lot more funk, a lot more soul, a lot more,
Yeah.
yeah, just like sultry sexiness to both nights, but especially to Saturday night. It was awesome.
Yeah. I mean, one thing I've been really interested in with this tour is it's got me thinking a lot about technology and like how that
Mm,
impacts Trey's playing. And he's brought these new synthesizer pedals on, whatever this
mhm,
Jedi pedal is. And I think like there was a question coming out of Fish Tour of like, is he going to bring this to Tab, or is this just a Fish sound? He approaches Tab the way that he approaches Tab. And that first night, one of the things that really interests my buddy who was at the Portland show was, oh, Trey's like he sent me a text. Trey's Toys came to Tab Tour, and like he was like, this completely changed everything. And those sounds are sultry. They're kind of they're
mhm,
so groovy. When he like hits that synthesizer pedal, he sounds like he's playing a keyboard, but it's a guitar after like hearing
mhm,
it a few times. Just like it moves in your head the way that a guitar does, but it sounds like a keyboard, and it works really well in conjunction with the bass. And whereas I felt personally on this tour that Mike was a little bit more in the background on Fish Tour than I
mhm.
felt, and he's been in recent years. It seemed to almost bring something out of Desron that we haven't heard from a bassist in Tab in quite some time, which was really interesting.
Yeah, I agree. I was listening for him like all weekend. And once you start, it's like he's there. And I heard a lot of
Yeah.
those effects too during the Blazon. I thought it wasn't my favorite Blazon, but I felt like the effects that Trey was using were really cool. You could see him playing with those. And I'm not sure if it's the effect, the Jedi pedal, the one that sounds kind of like he's playing bass almost. It's like so
Yeah.
deep. Yeah, he was using that a lot during the Blazon, and it was like really, really deep. And it was cool. It was neat to see that he was bringing those on and playing with that. It kind of like echoes, which is a neat sound.
Yeah, it's interesting because it used to just be when Mike would hit that note and it would kind of
Hmm
reverberate through MSG and like you'd feel it in your
Yeah.
gut. You're getting that now with Trey.
Yeah.
And hearing that with this style of Trey, which like Tab has always to me felt like, you know, Trey running loose in New Orleans or like on an
Yeah.
island, like combining that with like his love for like Broadway and horns. I don't know. Tab is such a unique sound for him. And there's a party vibe to it. There's a, almost like a Latin, like calypso vibe to it. But then
Hmm.
like he adds this depth to his guitar playing and it changes the sound. I agree. I thought the Blazon, the one I really liked was from the Wednesday show, September 29th in Pittsburgh. They played a really, really strong blaze on that night, but it was a good set closer. To me, the highlight of that first set at Radio City on night one was the tube and the in rounds.
Hmm.
Um, we moved then into the second set, which I think I would argue that this was the most complete set of the tour. Maybe the
Hmm.
Friday night second set, but like Party Time, and I'm just reading off of fish.net. I want to get your opinion on this because I think there's
Okay.
something controversial that Live Fish did. But fish.net has this listed as Party Time, Ghost, Mr. Completely, Shade, Twist. Um,
Well,
that's
I
how
mean,
I would read it. How do you read it?
yeah, I mean, he definitely went back into Party Time after Mr. Completely. Like that Mr. Completely had like super funky vibes. Trey's like playing with all of his effects. It was really weird, but it was still like dancey. So it was super
Yes.
fun. Yeah, which is great. Like, which I love because I like to dance. So I felt like it was like funky and weird, but I could still dance to it. Like there's still that through line. And maybe that's Des Ron. I don't know. I have to listen to it a couple more times. But then it gets like that super spacey weird, like the kind of spaceship, like phone call on a spaceship
Yeah.
sounds. I don't know what that is. And then Zero like brings us to like the Brazilian rainforest and it's like super tribal and it's like I don't think it was that night, but like one of the two it was Sunday night that my friends and I were watching him play all of those different things. And my friend
Yeah.
turns to me, he's like, forget Trey's guitar rig. Like, we need Ciro's drum rig. Like, what? Can you imagine being the tech setting the thing up? Like, there's like 100 pieces, and it's like
Yeah.
he knows where everything is and can just like grab it and like shake the keys or like the big piece of metal or like swing around some giant thing. And it's just like unbelievable. But so he did that thing, and then it kind of went into back into Party Time for a while, for a few minutes at least. So I don't know. I mean, is that a tease or is that because then they go into that like, the Let's Go Blue jam and
Right.
then back into Mr. Completely to finish it off. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I saw on Live Fish they have it going back into Party Time,
Yeah,
right?
it's funny. I mean, this is one of those weird things that like will just keep the fish community debating until the next show. When the way I heard it, like, because you're like that moment where it like goes, it got like dark and almost silent, and it becomes like
Yeah,
it became like a Grateful Dead drums jam with Ciro. Like
totally.
it was so
Totally.
spacey and weird. And they did that again the next night, I believe, in the
Yes.
Everything's Right. And I was just like, man, here's a sound that you're unlocking that like you should play another week of tour. Like this is why like we're so, we're blessed to get this run from these guys. And it's amazing that Trey decided and was able to continue with this. But like if this is the only time we ever hear this incarnation of Tab, like it's I don't know, it feels like a blessing and a curse at the same time. But when they came out of that silence, I heard Curlew's Call slash Mozambique. Like I felt like we were in that
Mm.
space. And then I heard Party Time almost in the way of that Wolfman's Brother from MSG, like 2018, where they play Wolfman's and then they sing Party Time. And there was this like
Mhm.
an unending and exhaustive debate about like, is this Party Time or is this a Wolfman? I I would have labeled it Mr. Completely with Party Time elements, but
Yeah.
you were there. You probably have the superior knowledge to me in regards to this. But
I
um
don't know. I think you could go either way, and I trust the people at Live Fish. They probably know a lot more than
they
I
they do
do.
they do know a little bit about what they're doing, and regardless, it was an incredible like 30 minutes of music there. And I want to give a shout out to listener Jerry Nash Jr., who I heard this as well. I was listening to the Ghost before we went live. He thought the Ghost was a nod to the Radio City Music Hall Ghost. um
Mm.
I I've gotten to the point in my fish listening life and whatever, like, I don't think that Trey or the band is ever giving, like, specific nods back to moments that we love, but he's in Radio City, he's playing Ghost, it's got this sultry, spacey vibe to it.
Hmm.
It definitely felt like that. Like, I definitely felt vibes to that 2000 Ghost from Radio City that's so good.
Hmm. I've never heard that. I'm gonna have to listen to that.
It's you have to it's totally mic dominated, and around, I wanna say, like, 18, 19 minutes, Trey just comes in with this chord that's very bright, but nobody
Mm.
transitions to what he's doing. They just let it ride for the remainder of the jam. It's gorgeous, and
Oh wow.
it definitely has, like, a millennial kinda groove to it that you would hear around that time, like Big Cypress, late '99. Um, One thing you said that was really interesting, I would never ask any of us to be transported back to November of 2020. It was far too stressful and far too lonely, but we did have the Beacon Jams, and it feels like a weird missed opportunity that we didn't get a rig rundown of everyone who was there, including Ciro. Like, that would have been such a cool experience to get an idea of, like, could you imagine being Trey when he discovered Ciro? Like, I just imagine it's like this, like, sweaty little club that Trey walks into and is like, I need that guy in my band."
Totally. You're coming with me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
He's so interesting. I like follow him on Instagram and he's just super cool and just
Yeah,
his sounds are amazing. I mean, I think that like it reminds me a little of like some of the stuff that like Paul Simon was doing when he did like Concert in the Park, like that like really big tribal, like really cool, like I think his is more African based, but this is more like South American. It's just
yeah.
I love it. It's really cool. It's really different and really rich. And I think Trey's into it. It did have like Mickey Bill vibes too. Like I was talking about with my friend, like I was like, this feels like drum space. Space was not my favorite time at Grateful Dead shows, like not at all. So like I was like a little wary, but it was still cool.
Yeah, it had the right amount of, like, darkness and weird before they
Mhm.
came back, and, like, if they play Party Time, whatever they're grooving on there was, like, so infectious that no matter what came before, it felt like that darkness and light in, a 5, 6-minute period in time that I absolutely loved. Um, the show ends then with a really pretty version of Shade.
I love that song.
Trey just put everything into that vocally, and that is one of my favorite just from a lyrical standpoint. I think, like, the chords fit the lyrics perfectly where, like, when they're singing the chorus, like, however the music operates and, like, it just,
Mhm.
like, hits you, like, it just, like, makes your heart hurt a little bit in, like, the best way possible. Um, and the set with Twist. Twist seemed to be just like a star for the band this tour, which was really cool. But what were your thoughts on the encore? He came out and did a couple acoustic songs and then ended with First Tube.
Yeah, I mean, I was like, "Oh my gosh, the acoustic guitar is out." Like, I was so happy. I was like, "Yay!" Like, so special. When the Words Go Away was absolutely gorgeous. It was just that song is really stunning lyrically, and, he's singing so beautifully, and this is a beautiful song, and I love any of those from Lonely Trip. They're just so interesting and cool to hear because it just brings me back to when I was listening to them for the first time, and I thought that was awesome. And then Theme is like just one of those songs that brings me back to when I'm like 18, 19 years old. So to be with people that knew me then was
Yeah.
just really, it was awesome. It was really, really meaningful. And then more, it was great because my friend that I was with too, we had been at 12:30 night 19 together, and we had been actually not in the show during more. We were like stepped out for a minute to go to the bathroom or something, and we missed a lot of that more, and it still like kills us. So like we were like, this is our more. We were getting it back. Like we were really happy. It was
Oh
beautiful.
man.
Yeah, but then the star of the whole night was that first tube. I mean, it was an absolute dance party madness. Like if people haven't seen clips of that, like a video of that, look it up. It's insane. They had like the disco ball spinning and just everybody was out of their seats, like full on into the aisles, just like dancing, like seeing a place like that become like a huge dance party on a Saturday night. It was so fun. I was telling you before we went on, I have like bruises on my legs from like bumping into the seats because I was just like getting after it. It was so fun. That was just one of those moments when you're just like so there, so in the
Yeah.
moment, and everyone around you is just like smiling and like high fiving, and it was awesome. So great.
Yeah, I feel like First Tube is there with Tweezer Reprise that
Yeah.
I don't know if there's a better song you could end a Fish show or a Tab show at. Like at its root, both songs are so simple. They're like based
Hmm.
around like one or two chords. First Tube is this repetitive riff that like just gets stuck in your mind as it plays over and over. And then it just, goes to these two power chords that just build on each other. And yet, of all the complicated songs Fish has played and all the like crazy jams that go into this key and then transition to this key and oh my god, what are they doing right now? And like what sounds are coming off the stage to just literally shred on stage. It never gets old.
No.
And it's one of those songs like when it ends the night, you know, by that point in the night, or like if it ends a run, I've had to end a couple of runs at Dick's where like by the end of Sunday night, I'm pretty spent. It's been a long weekend. It's been very late nights. Been out in the sun a lot. I've been dancing a ton. And then they end First Tube, and like whatever energy I've lost and I don't have, it just like kicks back for 7 minutes. It's the best.
So true. It's so true. It was a perfect ending to the night. It was just, everybody was just like glowing after. It was so fun.
My first, I got into Fish spring summer of 2001. I was given a couple of Fish tapes and I kind of dabbled at that point in time, but I never really like completely made the dive into the never ending abyss that is getting into this band. And there was a tape that I got that finally clicked. It was 11/17/94, and I was invited by a guy who had gone to a bunch of Fish shows in like late 1.0 to go see Tab at Alpine Valley. And I went to the show and I was like, are they going to play any Fish songs? And he was like, probably not. Like they may play Gotta Jaboo, they may play Sand, they may play First Two, but like most likely you're getting a lot of Tab
Mhm.
songs. So I was like, okay, well, I'm still going to see Trey. And the whole show goes by. They don't play a single Fish song. And I'm still loving it. Like all that
Mhm.
music feels connected to Fish. There was a great burlap sack and pumps that like is still one of like I say that version is that's why I'm a Fish fan. Like I went somewhere else during that jam. But he comes out for the encore and he plays First Tube, and it was that combination of like this is my first live Fish song I've ever heard. It's First Tube. It's a song I know, and I just remember the same feeling you're talking about, like walking out just glowing. Like I'm coming back to do this again. I don't care how much money it costs. I don't care how much time it takes. Like I'm seeing
Yes.
Fish at some point. So, um,
No, that's awesome.
it's the
It's a
best.
great story.
So we transition then to Sunday. Last night of the tour. At this point, like I wasn't really expecting any bad announcement. I was really hoping like we could make it through the tour. I had some friends who were going on Sunday that like we're not planning to go to the shows, and then we're just like, I can't miss this type of thing.
Hmm.
Um, so they come out back on the train and a really strong 20-minute MoMA dance. What were your thoughts
Hmm.
kind of overall walking into Sunday night after seeing Saturday, and what were your thoughts during that first set?
Yeah, I was really looking forward to Sunday. I think my friend and I, who had originally got the tickets earlier in the week, she's like, I have to be out on Friday night and we're going to do Saturday. I'm not going to be able to do Sunday. And then Sunday by like midday, she's texting me like, yeah, I'm actually coming tonight. I'm coming. I was like, yep, I bet. So it was great. So we had like a little crew outside again at a bar hanging out before. So we were really excited. It was like getting some time to connect with old friends again. We added more old friends to the crew. I mean, it was really fun.
Man,
So it was just great. We're heading in, and I'm convinced that Derek Trucks is going to come out because he's off night, the Beacon residency. And
oh,
this was like, I'm telling everybody, and I'm like, I'm calling this, it's happening. So when they come out with Back on the Train, and Trey just sounds so bluesy, like it's really kind of in that Derek Trucks Allman Brothers wheelhouse sound. I was like, yeah, I'm so right about this. But I wasn't. So it was James Casey. That's great.
yeah.
But yeah, so I was like convinced. And then I love MoMA Dance, and the one at Atlantic City that I heard, I was like really loved that one. So I was really excited to hear that again. And I love hearing Fishman on that. And then when he started singing, everybody just like went crazy. That was really fun. So it was a great, I thought it was a really strong start. I thought Undermine was really good too. He was playing like lots of effects, and like they had like the drumming solo thing at the end where they were like kind of going back and forth between like Fishman and Zero, and that was super cool. I thought the first start of that show was really strong.
Yeah, you talk about Moma Dance, and you were at that Atlantic City show where they play an extended Moma Dance. It was really, really good, and I feel like has been
Hmm.
at this point. I mean, there were so many good jams from the tour that I was
Yeah.
listening this morning to the Deer Creek Everything's Right. That is like, you know, 22 minutes long, fascinating, deep jamming, and nobody talks about it because there's 10 other jams everyone's talking about. The Moment Dance is the same way, where it's like
Yeah.
uh this amazing, I don't know, I think it was 14, 15 minutes, maybe it was longer. I can't even remember because like there were two other jams from that weekend that I go back to, or there was the Gorge Run. There, it's
Hmm.
the we were spoiled this entire summer is I think the best way to
So
put it.
true.
But but
Yeah, absolutely.
it's wild. Like Moma Dance, I don't think Tab used to play it. I think it was introduced during the Beacon Jams. I could be wrong about that,
Oh,
but
wow.
like Trey was singing the lyrics that Fishman would
Hmm.
traditionally sing. And then now you make a really great point. Like Fishman comes out, he starts singing, and it just like locks the entire crowd in right from the jump. And they play a extended kind of wild version of Moma Dance. Um, my favorite part of the set, I'd be curious to hear if this was yours,
Hmm.
was the Ocelot.
Hmm. Yeah, I was just looking at my notes about that. Again, Desron's bass lines were amazing. And it was
Yes.
right, like it just really, really locked in that song. And there was just like this like jazzy, almost like reggae vibe. It was like slow and they made this like really nice transition back into the chorus. I thought that Ocelot went places that it usually doesn't, especially with Fish.
Yeah.
It doesn't go that kind of like jazzy. I thought it was great.
Yeah. Ocelot's always felt to me like they play it, midway through a first set at a shed, and it feels like you're hearing this like weird callback to the Grateful Dead. It's got that
Hmm.
kind of, you know, bluesy but kind of countryish, chugly vibe to it that like I personally love. I know that there's a contingent of fans that just want nothing to do with Ocelot. I will take every single Ocelot at every show. I love it. I'm an addict for it. And hearing them approach it like this just blew me away. I never heard it like this before, and I've listened back to it a couple times now because it's just so good.
Yeah, it's really different. And it's funny because that's one of my best friend from college's favorite songs. It is her favorite Fish song. And it's not mine, but every time I hear it, I just love it because it makes me think of her.
Yeah.
And now I feel like I'm feeling different about Oslo. Like it was really cool. I thought it was a great, yeah, it went deeper than I expected it to. You kind of think it's gonna like just kind of, I don't know, be there and be
Yeah.
kind of contained, but it was really good. And it's funny you say that it's kind of like a Grateful Dead. I felt like there was moments when I could hear some of Trey's like the Fare Thee Well influence in
Mhm.
these two nights, especially Sunday. I felt like it really strongly after the show. On a re-listen, I wasn't so sure, but I want to listen for that again because I feel like sometimes I can hear him playing a little bit more like that, and maybe it was the two drummers too that I don't know, but I was thinking a lot about that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I hadn't thought that, but like the thing I'm thinking right now is like this tour and last tour for Fish, like there's so much death and darkness in the air, and like
Hmm.
Trey is just like providing such a service to people. We were talking about this earlier, like that he feels this just like duty to fans in terms of like bringing joy, bringing music to them. And I almost wonder if like when he's playing like that, it just inherently brings you back to Fare Thee Well because what a gift he was able to give both Grateful Dead fans as well as Fish fans who love the Grateful Dead to
Hmm.
hear Trey interpret Jerry in the way that he did. I don't know. It's interesting. I'm going to listen for that when I listen back to these shows because these are kind of again, I didn't think that this would happen to me, but these are like tab shows that are now in my regular rotation of like I have to listen to. It's great stuff here.
That's so great.
Um, anything else from the first set stand out for you?
I mean, Set Your Soul Free, I was just really missing the horns and the girls, like Trey trying to sing his own backup vocals. Like,
We heard that a
like
couple of times.
yeah, like that's really hard, like, and the stretch for his vocals. So that was just kind of the moment when I was like, oh, like I'm really feeling for you here. I'm missing the horns and the girls singing. But no, I think I agree. I think Oslo was kind of the standout. I really liked the MoMA and the Undermine was fun too.
Yeah. It's funny you talk about the backup singers because, like, if you think about, like, whenever he plays Everything's Right Now on Fish Tour, he just leans into the "na, na,
Yeah.
nas," and nobody in Fish I think that Paige kinda realizes it, like, half a bar too late that he has to sing that as well, but, like, when you hear it with Tab, like, Jen is
Oh,
150% there with him and just gives him
totally.
everything he needs. Um Set 2, we've got, Sand, Everything's Right, Lonely Trip, I Never Left Home, and Carini. This Everything's Right was extended, I think it was clocked in just over 36 minutes. Really just kinda settled into a groove and just rolled with that, went it back into that kind of quiet part that we heard with Mr. Completely. Um,
Mhm.
I I enjoyed this. I'd be curious to hear what your thoughts were like being in the room. I liked it. It didn't, like, blow me away the way that the Mr. Completely did.
Yeah, same. I mean, I felt like it got really slow at times and really
Mhm.
spacey and like weird. I remember thinking like this is really weird. It's good, but it's really weird. And
Yeah.
I know checking with a couple of my friends that were there after, everyone was like, there's a couple moments when it just felt like a little slow and too spacey. I felt like they got into like a more cohesive jam actually towards like the last few minutes of it. It kind of like they
Agreed.
got, yeah, kind of into a groove. I definitely had that moment during the song where I turned to my friend and I was like, "What song is this?" You know, like where are we again? Like I have lost track. Like I think it's still everything's right. So yeah, it wasn't my favorite jam. I just felt like it didn't go anywhere super interesting. But I appreciate, that they're jamming for 36 minutes. I mean, that's cool.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I mean, I think it's kind of the reality of this tour is we talked about it, like, there's limited song selection. The
Hmm.
band is still trying to figure themselves out. I feel like the Everything's Right would have worked really well on, like, a longer tour where we had another 2 weeks to go, and it was kind of
Hmm.
a one of those jams you tend to hear where, like, the band is clearly trying to figure out, "Okay, what are you gonna do when I do this? Okay, where are you gonna go
Hmm.
if I go like this?" And that results 2, 3 shows later in a really strong jam, but, I thought it was interesting. I thought, like, the Friday night Everything's Right, I think the thing that just blew me away from it was they just locked into the Everything's Right groove, and they had
Hmm.
no interest in doing anything else, and it was just variations on that for 29 minutes, and this felt like kind of the next step, but I don't know if they knew exactly where to go. They ended
Hmm.
up landing in Lonely Trip, which is one of my favorite new songs, off of the album, and they played it the 3rd night at Dick's. I think that you got
Hmm.
the debut performance, I believe, at,
I think so. At
Hershey
Hershey.
too?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that song too. It's so pretty, and he's
Yeah.
playing it really well, and, Ray was playing really beautifully, like, the piano is gorgeous. It's really pretty. That song is just beautiful.
Yeah. Big shout out as well to Ray. I felt like Saturday, Sunday night was where this whole shift like, he has a very specific role in Tab.
Mhm,
And he's not supposed to be Page, but he kind of needed to do more during these last few shows. And it felt like by Saturday and Sunday night, he fell into his place of like, okay, I'm going to modulate even if Trey is not, and I'm going to add different
mhm.
ideas. And I found like Ray was really stepping up his game during these two shows in a very cool way. But yeah, then on like a ballad like Lonely Trip, he just sounded gorgeous.
Yeah, I could hear him more than I've ever heard him with Tab, and I think maybe you're probably right that he was kind of having to do that, but yeah, I definitely heard him more, and it was really nice. He's beautiful. He's an incredible player.
It's interesting how, like, with Tab, standard Tab, it's this wall of sound with horns and guitars and, everything is just, like, coming at you, and Trey described it in Alive Again as, like, it's like a freight train, just, like, all these
Yeah.
sounds coming down the tracks at you. But with this, you remove the horns, you bring in Fishman, who I don't know any drummer that's able to, like, play nothing while still keeping the beat and still keeping the groove and, providing space for the other musicians. You, as a result, heard Desron, you heard Ray so much
Mhm,
clearer than when you normally would. Um, I Never Left Home was really quite good. And then Carini ends it, and then we get this encore that you know, tab encores, especially on this tour, have been interesting in the sense that like you usually get an acoustic song, you usually
mhm,
get a little bit of Trey banter. That's something you typically don't get with Fish, and then you get the big rocking song to end it. This kind of took that model and added a ton of emotion and a
mhm.
ton of gratitude and just like, I don't know, like listening to it was really emotional. You were there. What was the encore like for you?
Well, I saw 2 songs of the encore in full transparency. I had to leave. I had been up since 5 a.m. on Sunday. I had to take my daughter to a soccer game
Oh
that
my
was far
goodness.
away, and then I had to get up the next morning to teach. So I was there. I left at the end of Backwards Down the Number Line because Trey
Okay.
said, "I'm gonna do one more for you guys." And I was like, "Okay." So I listened to that, and then I was like, "I really need to like get back to Brooklyn." And
Life.
then yeah, it sucks. And then I listened to the encore and I was like, oh my God. But it was amazing to listen to. I mean, James, his vocals were incredible and Trey sounded like really emotional. And James sounded amazing. I mean, it was nice to hear him sing so much and to take, especially like, I just love all those songs. And I thought it was really beautiful to hear him sing them too and get so much time on the vocals.
Yeah, I mean, just really special that like I don't think that we got much notice that James would be out of the tour before the tour started. I feel like it was only a
I don't
couple
think
of
so.
days,
Yeah.
and you know, it sounds like his prognosis is positive. Like it sounds like
Hmm.
he's going to make it through this quite well, at least from what we've been hearing. But it's
Hmm.
cancer. It's scary as all
Yeah.
hell, and you go through chemo, and everything about it is awful and terrifying. And to see him in the flesh there with
Hmm.
like everything that's happening right now, like that just, I had friends who were at it who were just like a puddle at that point.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
I listened the next morning, I was just like, this is what it's all about. And it felt like a culmination in many ways of, the band over summer tours seemed very talkative and seemed like
Hmm.
every single run they had to tell you, we are grateful you're here. We're so thankful to be here. And it felt like that was on a small personal level, like where it all kind of came together for Trey in front of us all.
Yeah, and Life Beyond the Dream I love that song. I think it's
Yeah.
so gorgeous. And whenever Trey can have kind of like other people help with those vocals, the song sounds just epic, I think. Like when like Susan, Tedeschi sings or when you have like James singing it. It's gorgeous. That song I mean, it's like a whole movie, that song to me. It's just really big and it paints all these beautiful vivid pictures and I know it kind of, some people think it slows down Fish shows, but I love that song and it was a beautiful version.
Yeah, I mean, I'm of the mind. I think Ghost of the Forest is personally, I think it's one of the biggest accomplishments, maybe the biggest accomplishment of Trey's musical career. Like, and
Mm,
I love Fish more than anything else, but like Ghost of the Forest, like the way that he uh was able to write and create songs that are so personal but like universal in a lot of
hmm.
cases. And Life Beyond the Dream is one of those songs that like, yes, it's slow, and yes, ballads tend to not be as well received on Fish Tour the way that they were on Dead Tour for a variety of
Yeah.
reasons. It feels to me like one of those moments that if you just stop, hear the lyrics, think about your own life in that moment, like
Hmm.
it just, how do you not appreciate it? And having James come in with a voice that like, why is James not singing more? Like,
I
oh my
know.
God.
Oh my,
I was
that's
just like,
exactly what I
dude.
thought. Give this guy the mic. Like, come
I know,
on.
man. And like a buddy of mine messaged me and he was like, it's crazy. Trey's written these very personal songs about death, Miss You and A Life Beyond the Dream.
Hmm.
And Miss You, like the potentially the strongest version we've ever heard of Miss You was when Bob Weir sang it, and you're suddenly like
Hmm.
hearing him sing to Jerry. And now James Casey, who's fighting you know, an illness that kills thousands and thousands of people each year. And again, sounds like he's going to make it through this okay, but like, still a very scary diagnosis to receive. And he's singing this song that was about one of Trey's best friends who passed away from cancer. Like, there's just so many levels to this performance that I will keep going back to it.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm always curious about that, like why ballads aren't as well received at Fish shows as they were at Dead shows. I mean, I know that like, Jerry was kind of the king of the ballad, but it's just interesting to see if like as Trey gets older and as Trey, writes more maturely. I think there's no doubt, his dad rock days, what they call I Love It All, but like, he's
Same.
writing much more maturely. If that will change, but I'm here for the ballads.
I am too, and I thought this summer on Fish Tour, they were some of the strongest parts of the tour was
Hmm.
they figured out a way, there's like a Lonely Trip from Hershey's a great example. There's a Mountains in the
Hmm.
Mist from the Gorge. There's a Life Boy from the Gorge. um Farmhouse from Dick's. Like there are these moments where they would play a ballad and you could make the argument in a Fish setlist construction that they should have played something more high energy here because it would have got everyone going and blah blah blah. I can understand that and I can dive into the nuances of that any day, but they chose to play the ballad and they're putting everything into the ballad in the way that
Hmm.
20 years ago they would put everything in the way to a peaking, version of a song.
Hmm.
I mean, I almost wonder, like, they didn't really introduce ballads until what, like 1992 with Fast Enough for You. And it,
Hmm.
and then, every couple of years you get a new one. You'd get Life Boy, you'd get, If I Could, you'd get, Billy Breathes, so on and so forth as they kind of move their way through the tour or through their career. Now they have this like group of 20 to 30 songs that are
Hmm.
very sweet and especially in recent years like speak about really important issues and speak about death and losing people that you love. And it seems like with where they're at in life right now, they can just hit that emotional range better than they could in the past. So that's my perspective. I could
Hmm.
be wrong on it.
Yeah, definitely. And I also think they're playing really hard and really intensely so that when they like that shade, like I needed that moment, like
Right, right, right.
I was like, thank you. I need to like take a breath. And I think that that's like, probably maybe people will start needing that moment more. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I get. I mean, we are aging as a fan base and need those
I don't know
quiet
about you,
moments as well.
Brian. I'm not aging. Maybe you are.
We are staying young forever. You're right.
Speak for yourself.
No, it was a very, very emotional set encore. And it was excellent. So I'm really excited. I'm really happy for you that you were able to go to these shows.
Thanks.
These are pretty awesome, and I'm glad we're able to talk through this. I hope that we get to see this band in some incarnation again. I don't know if we will, but I hope that we get to at some point.
Yeah, me too. And I really want one of those JFAT t-shirts.
Yes,
That's
yes.
hysterical.
Just leave it
So
to
good.
the Fish community. Like
I
something
mean,
changes and there's suddenly a t-shirt.
it's like instantly. I mean, like instantly. It's like amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like those.
Well, what's on tap for you next? Are you doing any fall? Are you going to webcast? Are you doing MSG? What do you have coming up?
I mean, I'll definitely webcast some shows. I can't do Vegas because I have kids who still want me around on Halloween. So in a few years, that will be different. But for now, I'm here in Brooklyn trick or treating, or handing out candy or both. And so I'm not going to see any fall tour as of yet. You never know. You never know how things are going to go down. I wasn't supposed to go to Atlantic City, and I actually ended up driving 5 hours by myself and went to a show with someone I had met once before, a friend of a friend who was down there. And I had an awesome night. So you never know where the Fish
Yeah.
universe is going to take me, but I'll definitely be at MSG. Probably not all four, but definitely 12:30, and definitely is at least two, hopefully three, but 12:30 is like my favorite show. It's just, I love it. I feel like the night before the night, it's always so good. The band is like really dialed in, but they're also looser and ready to have fun. And I think they usually take it some really great places.
You just summarized it perfectly. That is my favorite date of the entire year in the Fish calendar. It's 12:30 comes around and I just have all these historic
Yes.
shows I have to go back and listen to, and then I have to watch. I mean, my favorite Fish shows have happened on 12:30, so you have to be there. That's the night. Well, let's plan to get you back on to talk about the MSG shows, and we'll talk.
That'd be awesome.
Maybe we'll do like a New Year's recap of 12:30, seeing how it is.
That would be awesome. I'd love that.
Awesome, Megan. Well, thank you as always for hanging with us. This was a super fun conversation.
Thank you, Brian. I love talking to you about fish. It's my pleasure.
Likewise, we'll do this again soon.
Okay. Thanks so much.
All right. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for hanging out with us here mid-afternoon as we ran through the tab shows. I think tab shows at Radio City with Megan Glionna. That was an awesome conversation. Hope everyone is doing well out there. Fall tour right around the corner. We will certainly be covering it. Thank you all. Have yourself a great day and rest of the week. Take care.